Welcome, history explorers and English learners, to English Voice Stories. Get ready to dive into the life of a man whose ideas ignited revolutions, divided continents, and continue to shape our world in profound, often controversial ways. Love him or debate his legacy, the story of Karl Marx is a powerful drama of intellect, struggle, exile, and a vision that aimed to turn the world upside down. From a quiet scholar in a library to a revolutionary figure whose specter was said to haunt Europe, this is Karl Marx like you've never heard before, designed to boost your English while keeping you absolutely hooked. Are you ready for a journey into the mind that launched 1,000 movements? Settle in, clear your mind, and let the story begin. Our story starts far from the barricades of revolution, in a relatively peaceful German town called Trier, nestled on the banks of the Moselle River. It was here on May 5, 1818, that Karl Marx was born into a comfortable, middle-class family. His father, Heinrich Marx, was a respected lawyer. Though the family had Jewish roots, Heinrich converted to Christianity, Lutheranism, partly due to professional restrictions on Jews at the time. Young Karl grew up in a home influenced by the Enlightenment, the ideas of reason, liberty, and progress that had swept across Europe. Trier itself had been under French rule relatively recently, bringing with it more liberal ideas compared to other parts of Prussia, the conservative kingdom it now belonged to. As a boy, Karl was clearly intelligent and had a sharp wit. He attended the local high school where he received a good education, studying classics, history, and philosophy. He was known for his strong personality, sometimes stubborn, with a clear independent streak. While he wasn't marked by early hardship like some revolutionaries, he grew up aware of social differences and the power structures around him. When he finished high school, following his father's path, Karl went to university to study law, first in Bonn, then in the more prestigious University of Berlin. But law didn't truly capture his restless, questioning mind. Berlin in the 1830s was an intellectual hothouse, buzzing with philosophical debate. Karl found himself drawn into the world of philosophy, particularly the complex ideas of Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Hegel was a giant of philosophy, known for his idea of dialectics, the concept that history and ideas progress through conflict and contradiction, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Marx became involved with a group called the Young Hegelians, who took Hegel's ideas in a more radical direction. They used Hegel's methods to critique everything: religion, the state, even Hegel himself. Marx immersed himself in this intellectual battlefield. He read voraciously, debated fiercely, and developed a powerful critical perspective. He questioned traditional beliefs, the role of the state, and the emerging social order. He earned a doctorate in philosophy, writing a thesis on Greek philosophy. By this time, his views were becoming quite radical, making it difficult for him to find a job as a university professor, which had been a potential path. The academic world was too conservative for his challenging ideas. Blocked from academia, Marx turned to journalism as an outlet for his critical thinking. In 1842, he became editor of the Rheinische Zeitung, Rhenish newspaper, a liberal newspaper published in Cologne. This was a crucial turning point. As an editor, he wrote powerful articles criticizing censorship, the poverty of peasants, and the harsh economic conditions he observed in the Rhineland. He saw how government policies protected the wealthy and powerful, while ordinary people suffered. His sharp writing and radical views quickly attracted attention, and not just from readers. The Prussian authorities disliked his criticism intensely. Despite the paper's growing popularity, the government shut it down in 1843. This experience deeply affected Marx. It showed him the limits of simply writing and protesting under an authoritarian state. It pushed him to look for more fundamental causes of social problems and more radical solutions. With the newspaper shut down, Marx decided to move to Paris in 1843. Paris at the time was a melting pot of revolutionary ideas, socialist thinkers, and political exiles from all over Europe. Here, Marx's ideas continued to develop rapidly. He studied political economy, the study of how wealth is created and distributed. He read about the French Revolution and the history of class struggles. Crucially, it was in Paris that Karl Marx met Friedrich Engels. Engels was the son of a wealthy German industrialist, but he had seen firsthand the terrible conditions of the working class in his family's factories in England. Engels had also been developing his own critiques of capitalism. When Marx and Engels met, they quickly realized they shared a similar vision and analytical approach. It was the beginning of one of the most important intellectual and political partnerships in history. Engels provided Marx with practical insights into the workings of industrial capitalism and, significantly, financial support that would sustain Marx and his family for decades. Together, in intense discussions and collaborative writing, Marx and Engels began to forge their unique worldview, which they called scientific socialism. They built on Hegel's dialectics, but turned it on its head. While Hegel saw the conflict of ideas driving history, Marx and Engels argued that history was driven by the conflict of material conditions, specifically the way societies organize economic production and the resulting struggle between different social classes. This became known as historical materialism. They argued that throughout history, societies were divided into classes based on their relationship to the means of production, land, tools, factories. There were always oppressors and oppressed, masters and slaves, lords and serfs, and in the modern industrial era, the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class who owned the factories and businesses, and the proletariat, the working class who owned nothing but their ability to work. Marx's study of political economy, influenced by earlier thinkers like Adam Smith and David Ricardo, led him to a scathing critique of capitalism. He argued that the capitalist system was based on the exploitation of the proletariat. Workers, he said, were paid only a fraction of the value they created through their labor. The surplus value, the difference between the value workers created and the wages they received, was taken by the capitalist as profit. This exploitation, Marx argued, was not accidental. It was fundamental to how capitalism worked. Furthermore, Marx and Engels believed that capitalism contained internal contradictions that would ultimately lead to its downfall. Competition between capitalists would lead to bigger monopolies, constant crises of overproduction, and increasing poverty and alienation for the working class. They envisioned a future society, communism, where these contradictions would be resolved. In a communist society, the means of production would be owned collectively by everyone, not privately by a few. Class divisions would disappear, exploitation would end, and a truly egalitarian society could flourish. Achieving this, they argued, would require a revolution by the working class, the vast majority, to overthrow the capitalist system. Their radical ideas made them unwelcome guests. Expelled from Paris in 1845, Marx moved with his wife, Jenny von Westphalen, from a respected aristocratic family, a testament to Marx's persuasive charm despite his radicalism, to Brussels, Belgium. Here they continued writing and organizing with other European revolutionaries. They joined a small group of workers and exiles called the League of the Just, which was later renamed the Communist League. The Communist League commissioned Marx and Engels to write a clear statement of their principles. The result was published in 1848, a small pamphlet that would become one of the most influential pieces of political writing ever, the Communist Manifesto. Published just as a wave of revolutions was sweeping across Europe, revolutions demanding more democracy, liberty, and better conditions for workers, the manifesto was a powerful, concise, and stirring call to action. It famously declared, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism." It outlined their historical analysis, their critique of capitalism, and their vision of a communist future. It ended with a thunderous declaration: "The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite." The manifesto was published anonymously at first, but its message resonated with many who were unhappy with the existing order. Marx briefly returned to Cologne during the 1848 revolutions, hoping to participate and relaunch the Rheinische Zeitung. But the revolution ultimately failed in Germany, and he was again suppressed and forced into exile. This time, after brief stints elsewhere, he settled in London in 1849, where he would spend the rest of his life. Life in London was incredibly hard for Marx and his growing family. Despite his brilliant mind and world-changing ideas, they lived in extreme poverty and overcrowded, unsanitary conditions in Soho. His wife Jenny, who came from privilege, stood by him through immense hardship. Several of their children died young, likely due to the terrible living conditions. During these years of struggle and personal tragedy, Marx dedicated himself to his research and writing. He spent countless hours, day after day, year after year, in the reading room of the British Museum Library. Surrounded by mountains of books, reports, and official documents, he dove deep into the study of economics, history, and philosophy, determined to fully analyze and expose the inner workings of the capitalist system. This painstaking research was the foundation for his most important work, his masterpiece, Das Kapital, Capital. It was a monumental, multi-volume project intended to lay bare the economic laws of motion of modern society. Volume 1, which focused on the process of capitalist production, was published in 1867. It introduced key concepts like surplus value, the source of profit, and explained how capitalists accumulate wealth. Writing Das Kapital was a colossal effort, constantly interrupted by illness, financial worries, and political activity. Marx didn't finish the subsequent volumes before he died. It was left to his loyal friend and collaborator Engels to edit and publish volumes 2 and 3 after Marx's death, piecing together Marx's extensive manuscripts. Beyond his writing, Marx was also involved in practical political organizing. In 1864, he helped found the International Workingmen's Association, later known as the First International. This was an organization that sought to unite workers and socialists from different countries. Marx played a leading role, trying to steer the diverse group towards his vision of a class-conscious, revolutionary proletariat. In his later years, Marx continued to write, correspond with socialists around the world, and refine his ideas, though he suffered from ill health. The death of his wife Jenny in 1881, followed by the death of his eldest daughter Jenny in 1883, deeply affected him. Karl Marx died in London on March 14, 1883, at the age of 64. His funeral was a modest affair, attended by only about 11 people, including Engels. He was buried in Highgate Cemetery. At the time of his death, he was a significant figure within European socialist circles, but his ideas were far from mainstream. Das Kapital was known to economists and radicals, but it hadn't yet reshaped the world. The true explosion of Marx's influence happened after his death. His ideas, particularly the call to revolution in the Communist Manifesto and the economic analysis in Das Kapital, were taken up by growing socialist and labor movements across the globe. In 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, led by Vladimir Lenin, explicitly claimed to be based on Marxist principles. This led to the creation of the Soviet Union, the first state in the world dedicated, in theory, to building a communist society. This event, more than any other, propelled Marx's name and ideas onto the global stage. Throughout the 20th century, Marxism, or various interpretations of it, became the official ideology of states covering a third of the world's population. It fueled revolutionary movements in China, Cuba, Vietnam, and many other countries. It became the dominant ideology in the Cold War conflict against capitalist nations. However, the historical reality of states built on Marxist principles often diverged wildly from Marx's vision of a liberated, classless society. These states frequently became authoritarian, suppressed individual freedoms, and faced severe economic problems. Millions suffered and died under regimes that claimed to act in the name of Marx. This stark contrast between Marx's ideals and the outcomes of Marxist states has led to intense debate for over a century. Were these outcomes the inevitable result of his ideas, or were they a perversion and distortion of what Marx truly intended? Scholars, politicians, and activists still fiercely debate these questions today. Karl Marx's legacy is therefore incredibly complex and controversial. He was a profound thinker who provided a powerful critique of capitalism and inequality that is still relevant to many today. He correctly identified many tensions and crises inherent in capitalist development. But the political systems created in his name brought immense suffering and failed to create the utopia he envisioned. Finally, what does the story of Karl Marx teach us? It shows the immense power of ideas, how thoughts developed in libraries and cafes can literally change the course of history and inspire millions. It highlights the importance of critically analyzing the society we live in, understanding economic forces, and questioning power structures. It also serves as a cautionary tale about the unpredictable ways revolutionary ideas can be interpreted, implemented, and sometimes tragically misused when put into practice on a massive scale by powerful states. His life was a testament to intellectual dedication and political conviction, lived largely in poverty and exile. Yet his theories became a ghost that truly haunted the world, igniting passion, conflict, and change on an unprecedented scale. Understanding Karl Marx is essential to understanding the modern world. Thank you for joining us on English Voice Stories for this deep dive into the life of Karl Marx. We hope this journey has not only taught you about a pivotal historical figure, but also helped you navigate complex ideas and expand your English vocabulary and comprehension. If you enjoyed this story and want more journeys through fascinating lives and world-changing events, please like this video, share it with your friends learning English, and subscribe to English Voice Stories for our next adventure. See you in the next story.